Hong Kong, hub of Asia, trade center for the world. An intriguing mix of past and future, of tradition and modern enterprise. For years, Hong Kong has represented the heart of capitalism for the people of the Eastern Hemisphere. Yet, in the summer of 1997, this city of banks and business, of trade and commerce, reached the most improbable yet inevitable moment in its long history. After 150 years of British rule, the city of Hong Kong was deeded back to the possession of China, the largest communist country in the world. How will this changeover affect the world business community? Will Hong Kong become just another gray and sleepy Chinese city? Or will that country be pulled unwillingly toward a capitalist society? Devastated at the end of the Second World War, China has struggled to find a balance between its ideological purity and the needs of its citizens. Although the most populous nation on earth, and one whose land possesses a staggering abundance of natural resources, China's isolationist attitudes and strict adherence to communist policies have kept it from taking advantage of these great benefits. Following the fall of the USSR and the rumblings of change echoing in Tiananmen Square, the Chinese government saw that the time had come to accept some of the ways of the West. But how and where would this change occur? The answer was not long in coming. The end of British rule in Hong Kong and that city's handover to the Chinese in 1997 did not mark the end of Hong Kong as a capitalist center. Rather, it represented an important step forward for China into the world marketplace. During the past 15 years, Hong Kong has experienced an explosive growth. It has gone from the 23rd to the 8th largest trade entity in the world. Recognizing this activity and wanting to take advantage of the expanding Asian marketplace, many of the world's largest corporations have set up shop in this jewel of the East. Hong Kong has rapidly become the center for financing, distribution, and trade for the most populous area on the planet. In the 90s, the speed and tenor of business worldwide has picked up so dramatically that China's stagnant economic policies were leaving it farther and farther behind the rest of the world. For China, the regaining of Hong Kong represents the immediate absorption of a complex and functioning business infrastructure. This will help the country move toward a more secure position in the world marketplace. Now that it has possession of this great resource, what benefits can China expect from its newfound access to the trade routes of the world? During the 50-year period of its self-imposed isolation, China conducted an experiment in self-sufficiency. Neither requesting nor accepting the trade of the free world, the communist giant attempted to satisfy all of its needs for food, services, and manufactured goods within its own borders. The results were less than satisfactory. By gaining the trade facilities of Hong Kong, China can now open its doors much wider and retool its thinking toward one of the most accepted principles of modern trade theory, the theory of comparative advantage. A comparative advantage exists when a country specializes in the production of goods which it produces most efficiently. It can then use the income drawn from the sale of these items to purchase those goods which it cannot produce as efficiently. A hypothetical situation between China and the United States demonstrates this concept. Suppose that in China, a worker could produce 150 pounds of clothes per month. In the U.S., though, a worker could only produce 50 pounds per month. Suppose, too, that a U.S. worker could produce 30 computers per month, whereas a Chinese worker could produce only 10 in the same time period. Because it would be more efficient for China to concentrate on the manufacture of clothing and export its surplus to the U.S., China would have a comparative advantage in clothing production. Meanwhile, the U.S. could use its dominance in the computer market to express its own comparative advantage. By concentrating on the areas of their greatest efficiency, both China and the U.S. would reap the benefits of free trade. Through opening its doors to this type of unrestricted free trade, China would be aiding its own economic growth, while stimulating dynamic worldwide material and financial gains from the trade. Still, unrestricted free trade does contain many confusing pitfalls for a country not used to its intricacies. China's future use of Hong Kong will depend on how well it can set up trade strategies which can smooth this road. Using the example of clothing versus computers previously mentioned, we can see that China may not be the most efficient manufacturer of computers, but it does wish to participate in this important future market. How can China benefit from the U.S. advantage in computer production today without sacrificing its own developing capabilities? In order to protect this industry and to allow it to get a domestic foothold, the Chinese government has a series of trade policy options. These include the establishment of tariffs, taxes levied on imports, subsidies, government payments to domestic producers to help them compete against low-cost foreign imports, import quotas, a direct restriction on the quantity of a particular good that may be imported into the country, local content requirements, demands that some specific fraction of a good be produced domestically, and administrative trade policies, bureaucratic rules that are designed to make it difficult for imports to enter a country. These above policies are forms of government intervention. Such intervention is usually justified for either political or economic reasons. The primary political reason for intervention is to protect local jobs. The main economic reason is that government regulations and restrictions help to ensure the overall wealth of the nation. In either case, China will have to consider its strategic thinking with great care. This is where she will draw one of her greatest advantages from the accession of Hong Kong. Hong Kong possesses a great knowledge of the twists and turns of governmental trade strategies. Hong Kong has been dealing with these issues for years. As home to many major corporations, she has seen how both sides, the manufacturers and the purchasers, can use the various instruments of trade policy to set up successful strategies for growth. Because Hong Kong has already built its trade infrastructure around these strategies, China will be absorbing a wealth of knowledge and access to the world marketplace. Hong Kong has become a masterful player in the game of international trade. When China absorbed the city in 1997, she also absorbed Hong Kong's mechanisms for controlling the ebb and flow of trade. By incorporating these policies with her natural resources and high productivity, China can look forward to a most prosperous future.